What's up, everybody out there for Codex? This is Dan here again, interviewing another amazing comic creator. This is Mr. Karl Kesel, who has worked. Oh, sorry, it's my daughter on the side there, who has worked, decades in the comic industry. And we're going to jump in and talk about all of that. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me here.
Oh, not a problem, Dan. Love it.
And so I wanted to just start right at the beginning of your career. I was reading that you got your start with DC inking on the New Talent Showcase, and then you took over as the inker on Legion of Superheroes. So, what was that like, having you starting that book and then going into a pretty major book like Legion?
Yeah, well, it was very exciting. I mean, I was really excited. Because I was working full time as an inker by the time I turned 25. I mean, like days before I turned 25, I got the assignment to do Legion for a year. Because if you remember, at this point, the DC had decided with Legion and with Teen Titans, or Titans, whatever it was called, they were going to do the hardcover, softcover versions where there was the high-end paper, and that's what Keith Giffen and Paul Levitz were working on. And then there was the newsprint version, and that's the one I was inking. And the idea was a year later, they'd start reprinting the high-end stuff on the cheaper newsprint. That was the idea. They really never got around to doing that much, I don't think. But anyways, for a year, they had Legion of what they called Tales of the Legion of Superheroes open. And that's the book I was working on. First 6 months with Terry Shoemaker as the penciler. Second 6 months, a new guy named Dan Jurgens as the penciler.
Oh, wow.
So, brand new guy. I think he'd worked on Warlord before that. But I mean, really hadn't been around the block very much at all at that point. So, but it was very exciting. I did do a fill-in issue of the regular Legion book over Keith Giffen's pencils, which was a real thrill, real blast. And it was my first experience working with Keith, which was always a joy and an experience.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. A couple months ago, I interviewed J.M. DeMatteis, and he talked about, they had that long collaboration on so many different things. And everything I've heard about Keith was that he was just such, that he was a curmudgeon, but he was a lovable curmudgeon.
He was a lovable curmudgeon. He really was. I mean, I remember once, and I was into my career 2 or 3 years, and it must have been when maybe we were doing one of the Legionnaire 3s or something, or maybe it was Amethyst. But anyways, Bob Wayne, who did not work at DC Comics at that time, he ran a bunch of shops, I believe, ran a bunch of shops in Texas. He had Keith and me come down to do a signing at 3 different shops in Texas. But Keith insisted that we fly down and fly back in the same day.
Oh.
And so I had to get up in Queens, New York at like 4 a.m. and get a bus to Port Authority and get out to Newark Airport and meet Keith and get on the plane and fly down and do their signings and get back on the plane and fly back. It was a long day. It was a really long day.
It sounds like. So with the 2 Legion books, was there any kind of work that had to be done coordinating the 2, or was it just kind of like, you go do your thing, we'll do our thing, and that'll be it?
Well, I believe it's been a long time, but I believe Paul was writing both of them. Towards the end, I know Mindy Newell wrote an arc in Tales of the Legion that Dan penciled. But I think most of those issues Paul wrote himself. So, of course, he knew what was happening all across the board. And, Karen Berger edited both of them. So she was certainly keeping an eye on everything.
So it sounds like, so you said you were working with Giffen, you were working with Dan Jurgens. I saw that you worked with... You inked George Perez on the history of the DC universe. Right. You inked John Byrne on Legends and Superman. Like, was it, I know you said Dan Jurgens was just starting out, but, those guys were pretty firmly established. Did it ever get kind of intimidating? Like, oh, you're inking over this,
certainly. Definitely
intimidating guy now.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, at that point in my career, I idolized John Byrne, his work tremendously. So the chance to get to work with him was it was really exciting, but it was also extremely intimidating. I actually remember like the first time he called me on the phone, I started like sweating and he's like and all, but I did think that John, I don't know, it's as an inker, I look at stuff and it's in pencil and I have to try to figure out what it's going to look like in ink and capture what the penciler did, but in a slightly different medium, right? And so, pencils have a softer edge than ink does. Ink has a very hard edge. And sometimes if you just trace over the lines, it loses humanity. It becomes really hard edged and almost cold. And so anyways, this is me saying, a long way of me saying that I looked at John's stuff and I could see it in ink very clearly in my head. It was real, sounds really Zen, but this is how it works for me. And I felt very much in sync with what he was doing, at least most of the time. And I don't know. I loved inking John. I think George was more intimidating to me because my mind didn't quite think the way George's did. So I would look at it. I would look at his stuff, and I'd go, "It's gorgeous," but how do I interpret? And that was also a different project because Richard Bruning, who was the art director at DC at the time, said to me, he said, look, when George does Enemy Ace, maybe you can give it a little Joe Kubert look. And, when he does, the Western stuff, maybe, give it a more Western, a grittier look and stuff like that. And I really took that to heart and had a lot of fun doing it that way, and I didn't do it on every single page. A lot of it is just superhero stuff and you ink it like superhero stuff.
Yeah.
But I was given the instruction that I could push and pull a little bit. But George doesn't need push and pulling. His stuff was very solid. It was all there. I would say the only thing I did was sometimes he would do, all these little shading lines, and he would do like 20 shading lines on the side of the arm, and I would maybe make it 18 shading lines, 20, because there were just so many little tiny lines.
Yeah, so, he was not one for lacking in detail.
No, he was Mr. Detail, but the figures were so solid and the work was so dynamic. And that particular book, you really saw George's sense of design, which was really nice too.
And I saw in '88, I know that you co-wrote the Hawk and Dove miniseries. When you got into the industry, did you always have the desire to, not just ink, but to also write, or was that something that kind of came about after you were already working?
No, I was always interested in writing. I mean, when Terry Shoemaker was doing Legion of Superheroes, Tales of the Legion of Superheroes, after 6 issues, he decided to move on. And I had known from talking to Karen Berger that Terry Shoemaker loved cars. He loved cars. He loved drawing cars. And I actually submitted to Karen an idea for a book about a kid who has a car that can do cool things, because I thought Terry and I could do this together. That would be so great. And that didn't go anywhere. Although I will say, years later, I ran across that same proposal and I read it. And my God, the main character was Superboy. His same attitude. So obviously that sort of character was in my head for a long time. And then, so obviously that was late, like in the first 6 months of me working full time, as I submitted a proposal. And then when I was inking John Byrne, and once I got over sweating on the phone when I was talking to him, when John and I would talk, I'd say things like, "Hey, maybe Turpin is Brooklyn from the Boy Commandos all grown up." And John would say, "That's a great idea." And, or I would say something else. That was the one time he used an idea I threw at him.
Oh.
A lot of times he would say, he wouldn't say this, but I would throw some idea at him and he'd go, "Yeah, that's really interesting, Karl."
Like I tell stuff that how I say to my daughter, like, "Yeah, that we can maybe do that."
Maybe do that. Yeah, that's the maybe that's the important part. But John would call me. He said if I was working at Marvel, my name would have been Karl the Kibitzer Kesel. So,
well, one thing, there's a famous story that I've seen over the years about Hawk and Dove. Rob Liefeld. If anyone doesn't know, Rob Liefeld early in his career was the artist on that, and I saw that there was. I've heard the story over the years about how there was the story on Hawk and Dove 5 that where without editorial approval, he just drew all of the book like sideways because of the dimension that it was in, and that Mike Carlin had to cut and paste it so that you could then lightbox it onto the DC paper to print it like as a normal comic. Is that an accurate story, or is there anything else that happened with it?
That's pretty much accurate. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to ask Mike. My feeling was that if Rob and Mike had talked about that, they probably could have come to an agreement on turning the comic sideways.
Mm-hmm.
But Rob just kind of did it, and if it was a bad day for Mike or what, he just didn't appreciate that. And as the editor, he had final say on that. He, and but yeah, Mike statted and enlarged, reduced, cut, paste, rearranged, and that's what I lightboxed onto the stuff and inked. Yeah,
that must have been quite a project compared to working on a normal issue.
For me, it really wasn't that much different. I mean, the light boxing was a little different, but I mean, really, Mike Carlin did all the hard work there.
Yeah.
So,
and you mentioned Superboy. So for anyone that doesn't know, in '93, they the early '90s, they had the big storyline where DC decided to kill Superman, and then kill Superman, and then they brought him back. They had the big Reign of the Supermen event. And you took over as the writer on Adventures of Superman with 501, and you co-created the new Superboy with Tom Grummett, who is a favorite character of mine. What was it like being part of such, I mean, at the time, that was the most major event that was going on in comics. What was it like being part of that, and then creating this this brand new character? What kind of, if any, direction did DC give you for creating this new characters? I know there were the 4 new Supermen, one for each book. Did they give you specific direction, or was it just create someone that could take his place? And maybe,
yeah, I mean, I would say 2 things. First is when I was offered the gig writing Adventures of Superman, no one knew the death of Superman was going to be what it was. I mean, they offered me that assignment before that book came out, and then it just became this cultural explosion, so I mean, I remember talking to Jerry Ordway about, he said, yeah, you might be getting $100 in royalties a month off of Superman. It's producing royalties, but you're not going to get rich or anything like that. And I knew a lot of the other people working on the books. I knew Roger Stern. I knew Dan Jurgens. I knew Mike Carlin very well. I knew I really liked these people. So, and I knew, even if the death of Superman had not been a big thing, it was a good career move for me. It was a monthly writing gig on a very well-known character. I mean, I would say I am convinced my father never really quite understood my career until I worked on Superman. Yeah, then he goes, I get it,
Yeah.
So, but then when it came to the 4 Supermen, we all were asked to submit ideas on how to bring Superman back. And we had a number of different ideas, and it had been decided, even before the summit started, it had been decided that each book would have a different Superman. I don't know exactly. I had suggested that in one of my memos that I sent to people, but it could be that many other people suggested that too, because I think it was pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had suggested it, so in answer to your question, we were not told what kind of Superman to put in the books. Okay, it wasn't until we were at the summit that we just started listing what kind of person could Superman be, and I would say in the memo I sent, I had assumed if we were going to do 4 different Supermen, they would somehow reflect the title of the book. Mm-hmm. So Superman would have to have Superman in it, right? Action Comics, I thought, well, that would have maybe a Siegel and Schuster era Superman, more of a leaps an eighth of a mile, that sort of basic character. And I thought Man of Steel, maybe that's a Superman robot, Mm-hmm. And I actually sat there and I said, so what would be Adventures of Superman? What character naturally fits that title? And I thought, well, you could do a Christopher Reeves sort of Superman, because that was the name of the Superman TV show, The Adventures of Superman. And but then I remembered that old catchphrase, The Adventures of Superman when he was a boy. And I thought it could be Superboy. That would be great. And so when we went into the summit, everyone starts listing ideas. He can be an alien. He can be a robot. He could be, wear a suit of armor, blah, blah, blah. And Dennis Janke, the inker on Man of Steel, said Superboy. That's a possibility. And after we had the list, we started going down, and everyone said, well, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. And I said, even though Dennis Janke, which kind of gave Man of Steel a claim to the title, right? Dennis put it on the put it on the list. I said I would really like to do Superboy, and I even said The Adventures of Superman when he was a boy. And the moment that changed my whole career is that Wheezy Simonson said, "Yeah, you can do that." So Wheezy, allowed Adventures of Superman to have Superboy, and it was the moment that changed my career. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, I mean that. Like I said, that's that's a top character. One of the shows we do on CODEX here is every week we do one called Comic Character of the Week, and we pick one character and do a deep dive on them. And we rotate who picks them. And months ago I picked Superboy to do, and like I just had a blast doing that because like that's such a great character. What have you thought about like the progression of the character since you introduced them? They change looks as characters do, but they introduced the idea that oh yeah, he's half Superman and half Lex Luthor. And what did you think about these changes that have come about in the character since you were first putting them out there?
Well, I don't think in fact, I know I do not know everything he's gone through. I haven't kept track of the Superboy book over the years, although I do know I was very aware of Jeff Johns establishing half Lex, half Superman, which I thought was genius. I thought it was genius. And the thing is when I came onto the Superman books, the editorial dictum at the time was there's only one survivor of Krypton. There's only one, and it is Superman. He is alone. He does not have a cousin. He does not, so we couldn't do, even though my Superboy thought he was a clone of Superman, he could not editorially be a clone of Superman at the time. Now times change, and by the time Jeff Johns is writing Titans and has Superboy in there, he can do that. He can reveal part Luthor, and I thought that was brilliant. I actually, I was going, I wish I could have done that. I wish I had thought of that. No, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And, I can't say I really know of anything else that's happened to him beyond that. I read the first issue of Young Justice that Bendis wrote, and I thought it was really good. But I kind of fell out of reading that, so I don't know what happened there.
Well, there's, speaking of Superboy, there's another character that, has become pretty famous in the past couple of years that you co-created in the Superboy book, which was King Shark. Did you have any idea that they were going to use King Shark in the last Suicide Squad movie, or did you kind of find out like when everyone else did when the trailers dropped and everyone fell in love with the character and Stallone doing the voice, the hand
and no, I had no, if you had told me at the time that King Shark would be in a movie, any movie, and be voiced by Stallone and kind of be this, I don't want to say everyone's favorite, but he's certainly a lovable man-eater. If you had told me that at the time, I would have said, "You're crazy. This is just like a big shark guy. There's nothing that special about him." But he, he's there. He's in the Harley Quinn animated series. He's in some video games, as I understand. I don't play video games, so I don't know for sure. But he seems to be having a moment. He seems to be having a moment, and I'm very happy for that. Obviously we see a lot of different versions of King Shark out there. The Stallone version is very different from what's in the Harley Quinn animated show, but they're all enjoyable to me. I really enjoy seeing what other people do with these ideas, just like I hope other people enjoy seeing what I was doing with their ideas. When I took, some obscure villain or something and, use them in Adventures of Superman or something.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Harley Quinn, if anyone out there doesn't know, when Harley Quinn was introduced in the DC universe proper, you were the first writer to write an ongoing book for her that you did with Terry Dotson. So I know she didn't have the popularity at the time that she's blown up to now, but what was it like writing that first series for, and what do you think of how much she's, her popularity has blown up, especially over the past few years?
Well, I think she deserves it. I think she's a really, really engaging, vibrant, alive character. I think I think I was lucky to get to write that first series. I mean, when they said that they were interested, that they wanted to do a monthly and would I like to write it, I was like going, hold me back, please. I just loved, the Harley Quinn character. And I will say this. I loved the Mad Love comic that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm did.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was like the best comic of the decade. It was such a great comic.
Yeah, it was good.
And really, at that point, that was my only exposure to Harley Quinn. I'd never seen the Batman animated show with her in it. Still to this day, have not. So my impression of Harley was based totally on that one comic, but she was such a strong character right there. And I was thrilled to be able to write her. And it was fun to play around in the Gotham City sandbox for a little bit too, and I was working with some great guys, Terry Dodson, Rachel Dodson, Matt Idelson, the editor. I think we were a really good team, and I think we did some really good stuff. And I wish it could have gone on longer, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, Harley's time was not quite here.
Yeah.
I still think I'm still a huge believer. I mean, I love the classic outfit, but I still think I think there was a video game that came out like set in Arkham or something, and it had Harley dressed as like a nurse or something. And it was a Harley-ish outfit, but it was that red and white alternating thing.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I saw Harley out of her outfit and in just kind of clothes that had that alternating look to it. And I think that was brilliant of DC to do, because suddenly you would go to comic shows and there'd be a million girls dressed as Harley, because you could throw together any outfit with those color combinations and you were Harley. It was easy. You didn't have to get a special costume. There was a million ways to be Harley. And I think it really opened the floodgates for that character on a certain level, and then of course they started a new monthly, and that was hugely successful.
Yeah. And she's blown up, and you said the TV, the cartoon, which I think is hilarious, and then she's been in the Suicide Squad movies, and and branched off into video games and all this, so like she's now she's a premier character for DC.
Yeah, I hear she's like the fourth leg of their marketing division: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Speaking of Superman and Batman, you also wrote that Batman and Superman World's Finest series that dealt with like their history together post crisis, where I think it was 10 issues, correct? And each issue was 1 year apart.
Yeah, exactly.
To show the progression. Was that something that you pitched to DC, like, hey, let's do this book where each issue is a year, or was that something they came to you with?
That was actually a case where DC came to me with that idea, and they said, yeah, we want to do this book, 10 issues, set apart, each issue set a year apart. And I thought that was really interesting to see the progression of the relationship between the characters. Of course, it meant a lot of research, figuring out where each of the characters were at any given point over those 10 years. And, sometimes they were created some very interesting juxtapositions. And sometimes it was like, oh my God, how in the world do I make these two things go together? This is happening to Batman, this is happening to Superman. What sort of story comes out of it? But that was a very fun assignment. That was probably the most editorially driven in that they gave me the concept of anything I've ever worked on.
Was there any issue of it, since it would dealt with, all these years of the relationship? Was there any issue of it that was more difficult for you than others to fit in, like all the major things? Because I know there was the one where it's like, all right, this issue is the reign of Superman and Nightfall thing, and this issue is different things going on. Was there anyone that was harder for you to kind of put the two together during it?
I can't remember any of them being more difficult or more or easier, quite honestly. I mean, I think there was you had to pay a lot of attention to the precise continuity and what was exactly happening. But there was also a lot of room to play, because I got to say, all right, so we got Superman and we got Batman, and Batman has Batgirl. Who can we bring in from Superman's world that's kind of like Batgirl? Once again, to get that like mirror image.
Yeah.
And Rose and Thorn. Rose and Thorn can play off Batgirl really well, and that's something we haven't seen, and so there's room for some real fun explorations of different corners of the universe we hadn't seen. I also really enjoyed doing a Mixyz-Ptolemy Batmite story.
Yeah.
Although that was at the point where they didn't want Batmite to really exist. So if you read that story, it seems you can argue that Mixyz-Ptolemy created Batmite in that story.
Okay. I'll have to go back and reread it. I haven't read that. I've got the series. I just haven't read it in a couple of years. But
yeah, well, I haven't looked at
read it knowing
that. There are some high points to that series. As far as moments I'm very proud of, and there was other stuff I think I could have done better.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm very pleased with it. Yeah.
It was a good series, and
Thanks.
I know you're primarily known for your work at DC over the years. Especially with Superman and Superboy, but you did work for Marvel some too, writing Fantastic Four and writing Daredevil and a few other things. Was there any difference that you noticed between working for the two companies at that time?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to answer that because obviously after working at DC primarily exclusively for it was probably 15 years at that point before I did any real work for Marvel, at least 10. But I could tell I was more comfortable in the DC offices with the DC staff because I knew them. I knew these editors. I knew Dick Giordano. I knew Mike Carlin. And at DC or at Marvel, I kind of knew Tom Brevoort, and I would get to know editors as I was given assignment, but these are not people that I knew beforehand. So yeah, I mean, I was not quite as at ease there. I had to find my footing, whereas at DC, I kind of knew the lay of the land, and I knew what everyone's personality was, and I knew, and I felt very comfortable there.
Now, one of the things that was pretty major is when you were writing Fantastic Four in issue 56, which, I mean, that's such a great issue. I sat down and read it again the other day, and it's such a good standalone issue. But that's when they revealed for the first time that the Thing was Jewish. Was that something that you decided to do when you were writing the book, or did Marvel come to you and say, "Hey, we want to make this change with the character. We need you to fit it in the story"?
No, quite honestly, Brevoort approached me about writing a few fill-in issues, and Brevoort said, "I just don't want them to feel like fill-in issues. If there's something important we can do, let's do it." And I said, "Well, there's this old drawing Jack Kirby did of Ben with a yarmulke and a prayer shawl," and I said, "What if we do a story where we reveal Ben is Jewish?" And he said, "Let's do it. Let's go for it." And I mean, really. I'm very proud of that issue, but if you read and you just reread it, you said the first 3 or 4 pages of that some person had won a contest to appear in an issue of Fantastic Four.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so in the beginning, Ben runs into someone down in Yancey Street, and he's really scared, and this person runs away. But I mean, that was a scene I had to put in order to fulfill this contest. So I mean, there were a lot of weird moving pieces in that issue. But I and of course Stuart Immonen drawing it, you can't ask for better.
Yeah, I mean, everything about that issue was great. I loved how when he's talking to the guy at the shop, and he's trying to give him the Star of David back that he had swiped from when he was a kid, and the guy said I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but said it's you don't talk about it, nobody really knows about it. I thought you were ashamed. And he was like, "No," he's like, "Anybody can just do a Google search and find out I'm Jewish." He's like, "I just don't put it out there because, I look like this monster. I don't want people to, with what's going on in the world, I don't want people to associate that." But the whole that and the whole issue, the Yancey Street stuff, with the gang, how they always pick on him, and he kind of reveals, he's like, "Yeah, I don't have to put up with it, but I let him, pump himself up." But then when all the Yancey Street people start going after the villain in it too, it was such a good issue.
I'm glad you liked it. I will say the very last line of the book, which is one of my very favorite lines, where the villain tells Ben, "You don't look Jewish." Steve Lieber came up with that. We were a bunch of us were having coffee, and I was explaining I was doing the story, and Steve, who is Jewish, said, "Yeah, funny, you don't look Jewish." And I like fell on the floor laughing, and I said, "I got to use that. I got to use that."
Well, it was, it's a great issue, and I know that that is for the Fantastic Four movie they're making, that Marvel had said that was a big thing for them, is making sure they cast a Jewish actor to play Ben in the movie.
Cool. And so what's his name? Richie, right? Richie from The Bear is Ben.
I've seen him in a bunch
name?
of stuff, but the Bear I think is the most recent thing that is pretty popular. But I was like, all right, I can see that guy as playing Ben.
Yeah, he's got a roughness to him that I like. I think he's a good choice for Ben.
Yeah. Though I did think, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the old Fantastic Four movies, I did think Michael Chiklis was a great choice to play Ben too. Like he almost looks like the Thing without needing the makeup.
Yeah. I always thought maybe he's probably a little too old now, but Michael Rooker would have been really
good. Yeah, he would be good.
I thought a few years ago, Michael Rooker, he's got that real gravelly voice. He would have been great. Yeah. There's been a lot of good and I mean, like you said, Chiklis was not a bad choice for Ben, and I'm still not convinced they can pull Ben off in live action. I want to be proved wrong. But I've yet to see it. I've yet to see a Ben in live action that convinces me. Now we live in a world where we've got Groot, and there's that rock guy that hangs out with Thor. I forget his name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name now. He's very different in the movies than he is in the comics.
But anyways, so technology has come a long way, but I'm still a little skeptical about them pulling off Ben. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to have to go the CGI route with him. They can't just put a guy in a suit the way the size that he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine that working. Yeah. So
I saw another job you had done for Marvel, which I thought was really cool in 2011, was you scripted a Hulk and Human Torch story that had been plotted by Jack C. Harris and drawn by Steve Ditko in the 80s. How was it that assignment came about? Where was this a story that they had lost and just kind of found and said, let's do something with it? Or
yeah, well, I mean, lost might be not the right word, but it had been, as I understand it, commissioned as a fill-in, an inventory story that they would have on hand if the regular issue of Marvel Team Up at the time didn't come in. And then they never needed it. But here was this story, all penciled, plotted out, but never dialogued, as I remember. I don't think it was done full script. And so Brevoort contacted me and he said, how would you like to finish, dialogue this and then ink it? And I said, I would love that. That would be great. A chance to work with Steve Ditko. And I really enjoyed it. And I have to say it was, I was surprised how much I would be inking Steve Ditko and I'd go, this little thing he's doing here, this is something I do. And obviously I got it from him and I have to say inking that story made me realize that, stylistically, when I do my own work, I actually owe a lot to Steve Ditko, more than I realized. There's a lot that Steve Ditko did in his work that I have picked up on and incorporated in my own work and never really even realized it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of artists in the industry owe something to Ditko.
Oh yeah. But that was a real thrill. I told Brevoort, I said, you don't have an inventory story drawn by Sal Buscema, do you? I'd love to ink Sal. But I guess they do not have one of those.
Outside of Marvel and DC, I know that you did the Indiana Jones story for Dark Horse, Indiana Jones and the Sargasso Pirates miniseries. This was back when Dark Horse was doing a lot of the movies were we thought done at the time, so we're doing a lot of these Indiana Jones miniseries. Was that an idea that you pitched to them, or that someone at Dark Horse came and was like, hey, you want to write an Indiana Jones book?
Well, they asked me if I wanted to do Indiana Jones. Mike Richardson did. And Mike, he's a very canny businessman. And he wanted to go out to lunch with me at one point, and we went out, and the first thing he said was, how would you like to write and draw an Indiana Jones miniseries? And I mean, I love Indiana Jones. It's the sort of adventure that I would love to do more often. And I just thought it was very canny of Mike to have seen that in me so quickly, because we really didn't know each other very well at that time. So I jumped at the chance. And I did it as an homage to old adventure comic strips, which I also am
Yeah.
a huge fan of. So there's a character in it who physically looks a lot like Wimpy from Popeye, except his name is New Jersey Jones in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a femme fatale named Cairo who's modeled very much after Burma in Terry and the Pirates, and the name Terry and the Pirates and Indiana Jones and the Sargasso Pirates. I mean, these are not mistakes. These are not coincidences.
It's a fun book. I got, I have a few, I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. I have not all of them, but I have a few of the Dark Horse miniseries. And that was, when I got them, that was one of the first ones I read. And it was good. It's a fun book.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, and this was my fault, because I started working on it and I got a little ways into the first, maybe even into the second issue. And then I was offered Superman to write. And which was, I can write Superman. It's going to take a week out of my life to write a script every month. Except Superman exploded and became like all consuming. And there was a spin-off and there were specials, and the Indiana Jones project languished for years. And finally Dark Horse said, we got to finish this. And that's when they brought in Ed Barretto to finish it off. I scripted the whole thing up front. And, but that's why and this is what I'm leading up to, is when I started it, Kurt Busiek gave me a call and he goes, hey, I got this friend who'd love to do covers for Indiana Jones. He's this guy named Alex Ross, and he hasn't done much for comics, but he's going to do cover. We're working on this thing called Marvels, and so Alex does the first 2 covers of Indiana Jones, and then I get Superman, and the project languishes for a number of years, and so they have, by then Alex is too busy to finish off the covers for Indiana Jones.
You go from being unknown to being, a superstar.
It happens. It happened to Alex, that's for sure. And,
I was kind of wondering why there was, that switch in the art partway through the story. Yeah,
that's why. There was, and it's all because I got sucked into the Superman universe, totally unplanned.
And speaking of the Superman stuff, I know they, with the anniversary of the death of Superman, the reign of Superman, and all that coming, they've had all of, you original creators, you and Grumit and Louise Simon and and Jurgens and all of Bogdanov and all of these fantastic creators. What was it like going back so many years after it, and and them saying, hey, come back and do like another little thing to go with this? Like, did they tell you about the death of and the reign of kind of tribute or revisits at the same time?
Well, I didn't hear about. Well, I heard that they were doing 30th anniversary death of, but I was not involved with that. But then when they got around to doing the 30th anniversary reign, then I knew about it and was contacted, and I had a lot of fun going back to that sandbox, and I think I got to. I don't know. I think it was a good little story, so it was fun. I was sad Roger Stern could not do his Eradicator story. And it's not that he couldn't. He actually, for various reasons, turned it down. So, but Jerry Ordway stepped in to write it. So that was great.
Yeah. But outside of the Marvel and DC stuff, and then even the Dark Horse thing, in 2000, you were one of the founders of Guerrilla Comics, and you and Tom Grumit launched Section Zero. So, or the imprint under Image. So what was it like? What was the impetus for you and all these other creators going to Image and starting this, this separate imprint for yourself?
Well, really, I came in very much after the fact. I mean, Mark Waid and Kurt Busiek were the driving forces, and probably I would say mostly Kurt Busiek. But Mark was certainly right up there with him, and then they were kind enough to offer a slot to me and Tom Grumit, and we got to do a few issues of Section Zero before we couldn't afford to do it anymore, because we thought, and I mean, I don't know all of the ins and outs of this, but we thought we had some venture capital money coming in that would have supported us, and it did not come in. and I could not work for free. I had bills to pay. So that's why Tom and I had to put Section Zero on the shelf for 18 years.
Yeah, I had read something that because I wasn't sure exactly about it, that said there was supposed to be a website, and then the website was going to fund the comics, but the website didn't happen, and you know, all you creators had to kind of fund it yourself. So that
You
was
know,
venture capital money.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I was under the impression there was going to be some guy with venture capital money that was going to support us. Was a website involved? Probably. I don't know that end of the story very well.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, but yeah, unfortunately, we kept thinking we were going to get some paychecks, and we never did. And so I had to stop doing it. I just, like I said, I had bills to pay.
Yeah, because you only got to do, 3 issues, which left it incomplete. So did you, and like you said, 18 years later, you picked it up. I know it was on the Mad Genius Comics website, and then you did the issues you collected in the trade through Kickstarter. But was there ever any discussion over the years about taking it to another company, like doing it with Image proper or Dark Horse or any of these other indie companies?
Well, Image would have let us keep doing it, but they wouldn't pay us any money up front. So that was really a no starter. And I don't remember any interest from any other company. We did for a very short time flirt with IDW, to the point where I actually put together some mock-up covers. But once again, that didn't happen. It didn't come together. Tom and I thought we could do it as a webcomic. All we have to do is 1 page a week and post it in 1 page a week.
Uh-huh.
And once again, that was very difficult to do with our busy schedules. But then Kickstarter came along, and I looked at it and I said, I think maybe we can raise the money we need to finish it here. And it was an act of God, but we funded and we finished that book. So that was exciting.
Yeah, I got my copy of it right here.
There you go. Nice. Thank you.
It's awesome. It was such a fun book. So I was going to ask, what was the impetus for you coming back to it after so many years? So was that when you saw like, hey, there's a legitimate way we could complete the story and we can do it, we could do it ourselves?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Tom and I had never given up on Section Zero. I mean, Section Zero in many ways is my ideal comic. That's, I kind of thought maybe I'd spend the rest of my life doing new Section Zero stories. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that does not seem to be how my life is working out. But I'm doing other stuff that is equally fun and fulfilling. So that's great.
I know there, because I've backed all of them, and I know that there's, the delay with Tom getting the art done for the new one. And, the last post you put out a couple of weeks ago said that, you were still kind of leaning on him, but you were, if he couldn't get it done, that you would go to another artist, even though you didn't want to, but that your goal is to have it finished this year.
This year, I really want, I mean, listen, I think it's a good book. It's all written.
I love it.
But we got to get it drawn, colored, lettered, and we got to get it printed, and I think the end product is going to make people really happy. It's going to make me happy. But Tom, let's face it, none of us are getting younger, and Tom supports himself primarily by going to conventions and doing sketches nowadays and commissions. And he doesn't seem very interested in doing sequential stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And let's face it, sequential stuff, especially a teen book, it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work. And but he's got like 12 pages left to draw. 12
so
pages.
Close.
I know. So we'll see. I've emailed him and asked him to give me a timeline he can work on, that he can deliver the pages on. Mm-hmm. And I'm waiting to hear back on that.
So is there, after this one is completed and published, is there any future going forward for Section Zero? Like, I know that the two of you created it together. Is there a possibility that you'll continue on it with another artist, or is this going to kind of be the end of it? Or do you not know yet?
I would say I don't know. I mean, if Tom and I continued it, I would certainly not kickstart it until we were done. Mm-hmm. That unfortunately, was a huge mistake. Is Tom interested in drawing any more of it? I don't even know about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would say the future of Section Zero is unknown.
Well, and one thing I wanted to ask too about Kickstarter is, doing the Kickstarter is, it's not just, oh, I write the story or I do the art and I turn it in, it's done. Like, you're having to handle everything. You're having to find the printer, and you're have to do the layouts and the colors and the letters, and you're having to, do the design for the book, like all of this stuff. Like, what was the learning curve like on that from going like, all right, for working for a company where you turn the work into, oh, now I have to make all of it.
Right. Well, I would say it was a steep learning curve. I think I did learn pretty quick. I've made some mistakes and not made them again.
Mm-hmm.
But then you make new mistakes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought I had taken some production classes back when I was at the Kubert School, and I knew how to put together stuff to get it ready for the printer. And I had some basic knowledge about putting together digital files for a printer. But I still say I still was really surprised when I was talking to, it might have been Richard Starkings, and I found out that there were different colors of black, that the black he uses for word balloons can be very different from the black that is what the inker, what the scanned pages look like.
Really?
And I didn't realize that. Yeah. I thought black was black, but there are actually different kinds of black, and you got to be careful about that. You got to be careful you get the right kind of black in the book, or you can see it. You can, and once it was pointed out to me, it was very obvious. Uh-huh. But so, like I said, steep learning curve. But I've found I really enjoy all of these aspects of making comics. I enjoy talking to the printer. I enjoy designing the book. I enjoy getting it ready for the press. I enjoy, probably the only thing I don't enjoy is proofreading, because I'm really bad at it. But everything else, every other aspect of putting a comic together, I really enjoy. I enjoy doing the Kickstarters. I enjoy every day going, what can I do to catch someone's attention, to maybe make them support this book? What can I do? What is going to make them stop and say, that looks interesting, I need to check that out? What's the tagline I can come up with? What image do I have here that's just a cool image that's going to stop someone in their tracks? What is I mean, there's like when Ron Randall, who's a very good friend of mine, when he kickstarts his Trekker book, if I have a book up at the same time, twice now we've done $1,000 throwdowns to see who can raise $1,000 quicker, and the winner has to buy the loser has to buy a winner a beer. So, but I mean, little things like that can get people very excited, and I enjoy trying to figure out those things, all of those things.
Well, after you did the Section Zero book, for Kickstarter, you and David Hahn came up with the Impossible Jones Kickstarter. Oh, I love it. There's other guys that do shows on the podcast station that I've gotten to buy the books and start backing the Kickstarters too, because I keep telling them, like, you got to get, like, this book is so good. It's just fun. It's a fun book. And they've all started, some of them backed it too. But was that always intended when the two of you created it, that it was going to be a Kickstarter, or was there thought that maybe we'll take it to a company, and do it?
No, I would say, yeah, after this, the Section Zero experience, I became a big fan of Kickstarter. What actually happened was, I can tell you, is that Tom and I, we did the Section Zero 1959, the second Section Zero Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry to say, the day it funded, Tom accepted a job to draw a 5-issue miniseries for Archie.
Oh,
which immediately put Section Zero on hold for 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And not only immediately put him on hold, I had to do something to pay my bills, because I was, anyways. And I'd been talking to David Hahn about Impossible Jones, and I said, I think we should do a Kickstarter right now for Impossible Jones. And so we did, and actually the very first Kickstarter we did was going to be for just a 24-page floppy, which we had done. We finished that.
Oh.
And so we would have done the Kickstarter, printed it, it would have been in people's hands like in months, very short months. But it became clear to me very quickly we were not going to make our goal. That there's a few things going against us. David Hahn was not as well known as Tom Grummett. Tom has a very big fan base, rightfully so, and they are a huge reason the Section Zero books have been successful. And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to replace him on the book. I want to see him draw it too. But David Hahn does not have the fan following Tom does. Section Zero, even though it was virtually unknown, did have 3 issues published by Image Comics. There was this background knowledge of the book. Impossible Jones was a totally new character. No one had any idea what she was about. And new character, no fan base. David Hahn, we just didn't have the pull we needed to make that a success. So I canceled that Kickstarter and revamped it as the graphic novel that you have behind you, the hardcover. Hang on, I'm not going to take that right now, but they might call back. Anyways, and then we did the Kickstarter for the graphic novel, and that funded. So we were off to the races at that point. And and COVID hit. I have to say COVID hit, and I had to choose between which project I could devote to, because now the kids were home. The kids were home. We were homeschooling them for the duration of COVID. But my wife and I basically, we only had half a day to work. I would work in the morning. She would work in the afternoons. We would split kid care. And I looked at the 2 projects and I said, well, Tom's not drawing Section Zero right now, so I'm going to make Impossible Jones the priority. And unfortunately, that's what's happened ever since. Is Impossible Jones is the project that keeps being produced, so we keep moving forward with it. Anyways.
Well, yeah, you're on your 6th Kickstarter for it now that just launched.
Well, we did the first. We had the failed Kickstarter, then we had the Grin and Gritty graphic novel, and which is her origin, basically.
Which is, for anyone out there, it's so good. It's so good. But yeah, because on the back of it, on the last page, it says, "We'll return in Alias Smith and Jones."
Yeah. That's actually going to be volume 3 now.
Because then I saw, after that, you decided, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to do these 4 kind of team up issues. What was it made you decide we're going to pivot? We're not going to do that. We're going to do this other thing.
Well, David and I actually started doing the Alias Smith and Jones graphic novel. That's what we thought we would do. And I can't really tell you why. It's just kind of a gut instinct thing. I was thinking, I want to do some smaller stories. I want to expand, explore Impossible Jones' world a little more. I want to find out, the sort of neighborhood she lives in. I want to, find out what some of the cops are like. I want to, I really just wanted to, explore that world more. And so I thought, I think instead of another big movie, I wanted to do like a little mini series, And so that's when David and I decided to pivot to do the 4 issues, which are team up issues. And theoretically, they were going to be 4 self-contained stories, each featuring another, character in the Impossible Jones universe. And by the time we got done, it did turn out to be one big, long, interconnected story. Things we had put in the first team up issue with a character called Holly Days. It became extremely important for the climax of the whole series. So all 4 issues eventually tied together. That wasn't the intention, but it ended up being that way. And originally I thought we could produce these 4 issues in a year, and we could have if they'd stayed like 24 pages. But the very first one was 30, the second one was 38, the third one was 48. And the last one, which I'm still mailing out right now, that was 62 pages long. The main story was 62 pages long. And so it took us longer than a year to do those 4 books.
Each one just seems like it's, it gets, more popular than the last one. You get more backers, you get, more pledges. I mean, that's got to be a thrill for you that people are responding to the character, you keep bringing, you're not having people drop off, you're having more people come in.
Yeah. So and now of course right now we're doing the Impossible Jones Volume 2, which is collecting the team up stories.
Yes.
So but the thing is, we're not just collecting the team up stories. There's one of the team ups, the second team up, Impossible Jones with Captain Lightning. I never liked the ending of that story. I knew what I wanted the ending to be, but I had a certain number of pages we were trying to stay to. And so I really squeezed down the ending a lot. And the first thing I said to David when we started talking about the collection is, I said, I want to change this ending. I want to expand it. I want to make it the ending it should have been the first time around. So we're taking out one page and putting in 3 pages instead. So, I mean, this is the sort of thing. We're not going to do that with every issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I will go back and try to fix the typos that are in all the books. Then we're also producing 12 more new pages. So that's a total of 15 new pages in this book of story. I think it becomes then the definitive version of this arc, this team up arc.
So what was it that went into creating the character when you and David Hahn got together? Was it, who was the first one that had like the kernel of an idea of, I want to do this?
Well, that was me. I mean, and I will say, I actually literally woke up one morning with this idea in my head, except it wasn't Impossible Jones at the time. It was Plastic Man.
Okay.
I actually woke up one morning and I said, oh my God, I know how I would do Plastic Man. Plastic Man was E.L. O'Brien, a thief, and he falls into a vat of acid. He gets superpowers, and the first thing he says is, I will fight crime. And I said, no, he should have said, I'm going to get the sons of bitches who left me behind to die, And then he goes after them. But from the outside looking in, he's going after criminals. You must be a hero.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a really great, twist to it. That people think the character is a hero, but really they are not. And I, recently, I don't know if I should say recently, I can't remember exactly how long after Harley Quinn this came up, but I had really enjoyed writing Harley Quinn. Harley was a great character to write. I enjoyed that sort of take charge, sort of powerful woman, and I wanted to do a character like that. And I thought, I will take this Plastic Man idea and put it onto Harley Quinn, and we'll come up with Impossible Jones. And the name, quite honestly, is a tribute to another bit of comic history. Al Capp, who did Little Abner, had a character called Stupendous Jones, or Stupefying Jones. And I always loved that name. I thought that was a really funny name. And so this is kind of a tribute to Stupefying Jones, except it's Impossible Jones. And what else was I going to say about that? And then I would say, as any good character does, even though the kernel was Plastic Man meets Harley Quinn, when you started writing the character, she became a lot more than that. And she really went off in her own direction. And in fact, we introduced very early in the story, in the first graphic novel, a character called Holly Days, who is a Christmas-themed thief who is very specifically modeled after Harley Quinn. And I did that to show that Impossible Jones is actually very different from Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
You can see how different she is from Holly Days. And so anyways, like I said, great characters do take on a life of their own, and Impossible Jones has certainly done that. Really, I mean, I'm still learning things about her. I was just, when I was writing some of the new material for this new Kickstarter, I realized that Impossible Jones really doesn't care what anyone thinks of her. And she's very aware sometimes of what people think of her, and she just doesn't care. And whereas I think Harley Quinn is not aware of what other people think of her. It just kind of like goes right over her head, and she just keeps being Harley.
Yeah.
But, Impossible Jones is very aware of what you think of her, and she doesn't give a shit.
Well, for anyone, we keep talking about this Kickstarter. For anyone that wants to back it, make sure you check it out here. It's just, like I said, I've backed all of them. every one of them is just a ton of fun. That's what I always tell people. Like if you want to sit down and read a book that you're just going to enjoy, you're going to smile, you're going to have a good time reading it, this is what it is. Check out impossiblekickstarter.com. That'll take you to the page, and you got funded pretty quick, right? Within the first couple hours this time.
Yeah. We hit our funding goal 3.5 hours in, so that was great.
Yeah,
that was, but like any Kickstarter, you have your start, and then what we call the doldrums, where everything goes way down, and then usually right towards the end you get another uptick because people go, oh, it's going away, I have to support it before it goes away. I do this too, all the time. So we go through 14th of January, February, March, 14th of March, right? That's next month, right?
Yeah.
So it's we actually started on Valentine's Day. That was a secret launch.
I like the little secret Valentine that you sent out too. I don't know what my backer number was, but I backed it. I backed it within the first hour or two of it coming out.
Thanks. Yeah. We had a lot of fun coming up with, once I had this idea, let's do secret Valentine. And if you back it, we'll send you a link and you can see this, PDF, downloaded PDF of this Valentine, which we will also send out as a printed version when we send out the book. But, it almost didn't happen because David and we couldn't figure out what this Valentine was going to look like. We were really, really stumped for a long time. And then one morning, I just suddenly realized, oh, wait, this is how we do it. And it's really simple and it's really striking and it'll work really well. And I'm personally very happy with how the secret Valentine looks.
It looks great. And it's going to be cool to have a printed version. That's one thing I like about all these Impossible Jones Kickstarters is you get the book, but you end up getting so much extra stuff too. Like I've got the Imp and Holly Jones poster here. I've got that from their book. I've got that framed on my wall, and
that's great. That's wonderful.
And you have I'm going to frame the one that just came with the new one too. And there's always the like the cards that come with it and the chibi stickers, and the last couple you've had the look, like the really nice pin that comes with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, hopefully,
the book, and then you get all of this extra cool stuff too.
Well, that's most of that is stretch goals where if we can raise enough money, I'll sweeten the pot. I'll throw something in. I'll throw in some chibi stickers. I'd love to throw in some more enamel pins this time around. And I should say, as much as I would love that people just buy it because they think Impossible Jones sounds like a great comic. She's a thief pretending to be a superhero. But I think the big selling point to this book is Arthur Adams is going to do a fold out of all of the major Impossible Jones characters. And he's working on it right now. I've seen his layout. They look great. But that'll be at the end of the book. You just fold it out. There it is, big double page spread, all by Arthur Adams. And this is going to be the only place you can get it.
So you see, everyone, what you need to do is back the book twice. So you can have the one book to keep as complete, and then you can have the other one. You can pull the poster out and frame it and put it up on your wall.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But after you did the first book too, I know Scout put out the 4. Took it and broke it up into 4 issues to make it a limited series. So was that something where you went to them and said, "Hey, can we do this?" Or did they come to you with the idea to do it?
Well, I actually did go to them through Charlie Stickney. Charlie does a lot of other Kickstarters. He's a guy I've met through Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I did my very first Kickstarter and was kind of like trying to figure out how this stuff worked, I kept, people would tell me, look at Charlie Stickney's White Ash Kickstarter. He knows what he's doing. And he does. Charlie is an extremely bright guy, puts together great comics, and runs great Kickstarters. And Charlie took his White Ash comic to Scout for them to get it into comic shops. And I trust Charlie. I know he's got a good head on his shoulders. And I said, if it's good enough for Charlie, it's good enough for me. And I approached them, and we struck a deal for them to repackage the Grin and Gritty graphic novel as 4 regular comics and get it into comic shops. And that was really great. I always have people at shows come up and say, with the Scout comics, and say, I found this in the comic shop and I didn't know about these other books you're putting out, because they don't know about Kickstarter, or they know very little about Kickstarter. Unfortunately, I've decided not to continue with Scout Comics, and that has nothing to do with the way we were treated. Nothing to do with. We were treated very well. I enjoyed working with them, and it comes down to time.
Mhm.
I just don't have enough time to do it because, and I don't blame them for this. Scout wants new covers for their books. That makes perfect sense. I would ask for the same thing if I was them. They like to have a page or two of new material somehow in the book, and I don't blame them. That makes perfect sense. But it got to the point sometimes where I first of all, I have to pay people to produce these pages and covers, and Scout gives me royalties, but not enough to cover what I'm paying people.
Oh.
And there came a point where I was going, we have to do this next thing for Scout, but we also have to finish this next thing for the Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter is what's paying my bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so I respectfully terminated the agreement with Scout. And once again, Scout was treating us very well, and it really came down to time. I did not physically have the time to do both.
So,
and
oh no, I was going to ask, is the future of Impossible Jones going to be solely through Kickstarter?
Right now, yes. Until something else comes up, but this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but potentially, if a company came to you and be like, "Look, we want to put out, an Impossible Jones monthly book, and we're gonna, pay you the same way we pay for, anything," would you consider like switching that to something like that, or would you kind of say, "No, I want to keep doing the Kickstarter"?
Well, I enjoy doing the Kickstarter. I enjoy the personal connection with people. I mean, I'm right now. I'm still shipping out the Impossible Jones American Angel book, and I mean, I look at every single mailing label I put on every package, so I get to know. Oh, look, this is the third time that this person has backed one of my books, or this is a new name. I don't know this name, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy that connection with the readers. So I'm not sure I really want to give that up. But also, I will have to say, the contract with Scout means no one else can put the book out for 5 years except me through Kickstarter. So for at least 5 years, this is what I'm doing.
I got you. Well, one thing I'll let everybody know too is, there was another book, Impossible Jones, that went through Scout, the Naughty and Nice book, and you talk about connecting with the fans. I bought that, and I got a friend of mine that actually just lives a few minutes from me, goes to the same comic shop I do, and does the podcast shows with me, which was funny because until we met online, we didn't realize we were like 15 minutes apart and go to the same comic shop.
That's funny.
Yeah. And now we sync up and go to the shop at the same day and time every week, so we can kind of like, pick up our books, talk. But one of the things is you did that the Naughty or Nice book, and when I picked it up, since I had already read the main story that because it reprinted a story that had some new stuff, and I was reading it, I was like, this doesn't make sense, and I pulled out my original one and looked at it. I'm like, yeah, these pages are out of order, and I messaged my buddy Sal, the Slab guy on CODEX here. I was like, hey, are the pages wrong in your book too? And he goes, oh, I didn't check. And he didn't notice it at first because he hadn't read it before. But I messaged you on Twitter about it, and you had said, no, I think because you said your copies were fine. And I took pictures of the pages from mine and sent it to you, and you were like, oh, no, that's no good. So he didn't have to, but he sent me another copy of the book and sent one to Sal too. Another copy of the book that had it where the pages were printed correct, and he actually signed it for me as well, which was just awesome. And then on top of that, he threw in, this cool Impossible Jones sticker, and he threw in the card here for Captain Lancet, which was from another Kickstarter someone else did, which that was a Kickstarter that I was excited to get this because I'd already backed that Kickstarter when that person had done it too. And I was like, oh wow, this is from this book Twilight. I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. So I want to, now that I'm speaking to you, I want to say thank you for doing that. You didn't have to like autograph a copy and send it out to me because of that, because it was, an error in the printer with Scout Comics.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder how many of those went out like that, though.
Yeah, And now I've got both copies, and it's funny because Sal, when he did one of our videos the other day where they do on Codex, where we do some of guys do videos called Slab where they just talk about grading books. The one that you sent him that you autographed, he's actually sending off to CBCS to get slabbed, and because they do the signature verification. So that's how much he liked it too.
Wow. Well, I'm very touched, very touched. So, and thank you for pointing that out. I don't believe I ever talked to Scout about that problem, but yeah, like I said, I just wonder how many copies went out like that. And the thing is, someone noticed because the copies I got were right.
Yeah.
At some point in the print run, someone said these pages are out of order. They fixed it, but they still sent out the ones that were in the wrong order.
Yeah. So it it makes you wonder if that happened on other stuff from that printer or what. But so you've got the current Kickstarter going for Impossible Jones, where you collect the 4 team-up books that have the new pages, and then you said, so is that going to count as volume 2, like for the graphic novels? And then you said the Alias Smith and Jones, that's going to be volume 3.
That'll be volume 3, and that will be next for us. And I think once again we're probably going to do smaller books that we collect together as volume 3 later on.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for the big companies, the finances work out best for us that way.
Yeah.
The smaller books help pay for the cost of the people doing it, but doesn't really put a lot of money in our bank account. And so then when I do a book like these hardcovers, that's when we make the money that lets me take my wife and kids on vacation.
Yeah. So that'll be the plan. So that after this collected one, then you'll do some more single standalone issues before doing a full volume 3. And is that the plan going forward, to just keep doing that?
I can't see that changing. One of the great things about this particular Kickstarter going on now is since the talent has been paid, we have raised enough money now to get this book printed, and the money we're raising now, quite honestly, is going to go towards us working on the next Impossible Jones book. And so what I'm hoping from this point on, we still have to raise a little money to really hit this point, but I'm hoping that we end 50,000, 55,000, because that would give us enough money to do the entire next single issue. And then we could get it done before we kickstarted. And then it could be sent out to people very soon after the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I've been working towards this point for years, and I think we're finally there. I think this Kickstarter going on now puts us ahead of the curve and can actually allow us to produce books before we kickstart them. And believe me, everyone wants that. Everyone wants to not wait a year to get their books. They want to wait a couple of months, and that's what I would like too. So I think this Kickstarter, ImpossibleKickstarter.com, I think that is going to put us over, on the other side of that curve. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I love the books. I keep talking, to them. We did our show Saturday night where we show off all of our new books, and we call it Comics Unleashed. We show off all the new books we get each week, and whatever back issues and stuff we got. And I showed the new one off and was showing them, like, and I got this poster and these stickers and this and this and this. And so like I tell them, like, it's just a fun, if you want to sit down and read a comic and have a good time, it's just a really fun book to read. And I'm anxious to see more of it going forward.
Right.
I think it would be a cool animated series too.
What was that?
I said I think it would be, a cool animated series too. I know that's something that would be tough to do, but like it just, not all comics scream out to me like that, but this one kind of does.
You're not the only person to say that. I would love to see that, but no one in Hollywood has given me a call. So, and I do not have an agent. I just sit in my small room and make comics. So,
well, one of the other ones you made is, that you would put out through years, the character that you created, you wrote it, you penciled it, you inked it, and you did the ash can for it, which is Sam Hell, which I think you said that was the first time that you ever published a book that you had actually fully drawn to.
Right.
What was it that made you want to, when you came up with it, that made you want to be the one to draw it? And do you have any plans to do anything with him going forward?
there's always plans. There's always plans going forward, and then you have to figure out what life lets you do.
Yeah.
I would love to do more with Sam Hell. I, you know, it's it's on a very short list of things I would love to do more with. So all I can say is we'll see. And I will say, I'm not as young as I was 20 years ago. None of us are.
Yeah.
And more I have been feeling the urge to write and pencil and ink something myself. And quite honestly, I've been very reluctant to do that because I'm not used to looking at a blank white piece of paper and figuring out what to put on it. And drawing some of those pages, it takes me much longer than it should. Really, a lot longer than it should.
Mm-hmm.
So that's made me very hesitant to do work on my own. But as I get older, I really would like to do a major project, a big project like a hardcover graphic novel that is all me.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen in the next year, or maybe even the next 2 years. We have Impossible Jones plans that we're going to stick to, but it could happen after that, and it could involve Sam Hell.
Yeah, I mean that little ash can was a cool story, so it'd be intriguing. Do you think there's any chance he shows up in if you do any more Section Zero stuff in the future, or if he shows up in Impossible Jones? Like, in your mind, are all these characters live in the same universe, or are they just kind of their own thing?
I think, like the early Marvel Comics universe, they all exist in the same universe very loosely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, so just like Doctor Strange existed in the same universe as the Fantastic Four, but back in the day, they kind of operated totally independently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And every so often, there was something that would indicate that they they would walk by Doctor Strange's sanctum or something like that. So that's the way I see it with these guys. I mean, obviously, I did an issue of the team up where Section Zero showed up. Yeah. 2 of the members of Section Zero showed up. But there's a problem there in that Tom and I decided long ago Section Zero would age in real time.
Okay.
And that's why part of the book that we put out, the graphic novel of Section Zero, the first 3 issues, which was published 18 years earlier, is followed by a page that says 18 years later, because we aged those characters in real time because we always wanted to. Now, the Impossible Jones character is much more, they're much more mainstream sort of superhero characters where they don't really age, And there was a line of dialogue in the sections when Section Zero guest started in Impossible Jones where, one of them, someone said to Captain Lightning, "You never seem to get any older," And that was a kind of a nod to the fact that timelines are a little different between the books. So yeah, they're in the same universe, but they don't always operate under the exact same rules.
So you've had so much success with these Kickstarters, other than the one that you said you kind of ended because you shifted the focus from a single issue to a graphic novel. Like, all of them have been successful, and each one seems like it's been more successful than the previous one. Do you have any plans to team up with anyone else to do another thing outside of Section Zero and Impossible Jones, to like do another character or team or something through Kickstarter? Or is it just focusing on Impossible Jones right now?
Well, right now it's Impossible Jones and finishing off the Section Zero in 1959. And other than that, I think, the next thing I do other than those would be something on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that's not going to happen right away.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to happen.
Well, you've worked with a ton of different, you're primarily doing your own, creator own stuff now, but you've worked on a ton of characters throughout the year for Marvel, for DC. Like, are there, outside of the ones that you've created, which were your favorite ones to work on?
I like everything I've worked on, more or less. It's hard for me to pick out a favorite, but I actually could tell you my least favorite.
Oh yeah.
I fortunately had a very bad experience writing the Human Torch series for Marvel, and that came down to the interference of Bill Jemas, and trying to create a series that followed some very strict and, to my mind, counterintuitive rules for what the series could and could not include.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, that was my least favorite assignment, unfortunately, because I love the Human Torch. I love the Fantastic Four. That could have been a really fun book, but it wasn't. So, but otherwise, my favorites, I've enjoyed Harley Quinn a tremendous amount. I've enjoyed, Superman a tremendous amount. The Amalgam books we did, I enjoyed a tremendous amount.
Oh, those were so good. And they're coming back into print.
I know, isn't that everything comes back? Everything
I'm
comes
so excited for that. I'm hoping that this leads to Marvel and DC deciding to play nice and do some more crossovers. But,
we'll see. Yeah, who knows? I think these things all come in waves, right? Maybe we're coming back to that wave.
So are there any characters that you haven't gotten to work on that you'd be like, oh man, I know I'm doing this now, but if this company called and said, hey, come write this character or come draw this character, it'd be pretty hard to turn down?
Hard to say. I mean, really, I'm having a great time doing my own stuff. There's characters out there. I mean, every so often I go, maybe it would be fun to do Hawk and Dove again. Wouldn't that be fun to go back to Hawk and Dove?
Yeah.
But I never really do anything except more than think about it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, at this point, I think I'm very happy just kind of playing in my own sandbox. I got to play in the other sandboxes for many years, and it was a ton of fun. But I'm very happy to read Tom Taylor doing Nightwing. I'm very happy to read what Hickman is doing over at Marvel. That sort of stuff.
So you worked with a ton of good creators. You've name dropped and all these different creators you work with. Tom Grummett, you've worked a ton with over the years, and David Hahn, and George Perez and Dan Drew. Like, you've worked with all these great creators. Are there any that you haven't had a chance to work with yet that you'd really be like, oh, I'd like to do something with them?
Well, I wish I had gotten a chance to work with Sal Buscema. I really do. That would have been on my bucket list. And I missed a chance to ink Don Heck, which I really kicked myself to this day. And I missed that like 30 years ago. But I mean, there's always new talent coming up that's very exciting and would be exciting to work with. I mean, no names spring to mind right now, but when I look at who's drawing things, like Bruno, whoever who's doing Nightwing, right?
Yeah.
He does such a great job. And those covers are some of the best covers in comics.
Oh, they are.
He's got such a strong sense for covers. And, then, someone comes along, like Greg Smallwood is on Human Target. Beautiful, beautiful work, And I'm actually not even saying I necessarily would want to work with these people, but I wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of talent out there.
As an artist, I'm sure that you get a lot of commission requests, at conventions and stuff. Can you tell us what the I don't know how to phrase it, what the best commission or the coolest commission that you've had, or some of the ideas you've had people come to you to do, or what some of the strangest ones are over the years of stuff that they wanted you to draw?
I can't remember any of the strangest. Nothing is coming to mind. I do know. Related. I'll tell you this story. Back when we were doing Hawk and Dove, and this is very early. Excuse me. I got a phone call at home from a fan who had somehow. I mean, my number was not unlisted, and this is landline.
Yeah.
I got a phone call from a fan who said they'd read Hawk and Dove and really enjoyed it. And they asked me, they were like quiet for a minute. They said, so, is Dove going to get tied up a lot in future issues? Obviously, that was their interest.
Yeah.
So,
if that's what you like.
But I don't know. A lot of these sketches and commissions you do at shows. For me, you almost don't know how they're going to come out until they come out. And sometimes you go, wow, that came out really well. And sometimes you go, that's a very nice drawing. And it's good for a sketch.
Yeah.
I think a few years ago at Emerald City, I did a sketch on a Batman cover. And, I purposely was trying to do kind of a more thicker Dark Knight sort of Batman, and I put a lightning bolt behind him. That one came out really well.
Mhm.
I was very happy with that. But not all of them come out that well.
Yeah.
So
I post stuff on my Instagram page. It's my art page, so I know too. Sometimes I'll draw something. I'm like, this will be a really cool idea. Then I'll finish. I'm like, that's nowhere near as good as I wanted it to be. And other times I'll be like, oh, I'll just kind of do this. I'm like, oh wow, that turned out really good. So
yeah, it's what you never can tell. You never can tell. So, but I am going to have to get going, Dan.
all right, yeah, I was getting to the end of it too. I was just going to ask if you, other than Impossible Jones, if you had anything else coming up you wanted to promote, or any conventions coming up that you're going to be at that you want to tell people about.
I haven't committed to any conventions. That is sometimes difficult. We have a special needs son, so it's sometimes hard for me to get away for shows, especially out in like the Baltimore Con, which I'd love to go to, which I haven't been to in a number of years. Baltimore or Heroes, both of those are really big shows that I enjoy a lot. But the time away from helping care for my son is it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, everyone, make sure you back the Kickstarter on here. It's like I said, it's fantastic. I love it. I backed it the first day. I bet you can see behind me. I backed all of them. And make sure you check him out on his website here on panicbuttonpress.com. It's got, I was looking at it earlier. It's got all kinds of cool stuff on there that you can check out. And also while you're online, go check us out on the codexstation.com. We always tell you can meet the team, you can get merch from us, all that stuff. So once again, Mr. Kesel, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. I've really been looking forward to it.
Not a problem, Dan. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this a lot. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right. Thank you. And for everyone else out there, until next time, I'll catch you by the spinner rack.